Do you believe everyone should have a lawyer on, on retainer? What are the benefits and how can someone go about establishing this relationship? Go ahead, tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so those are two questions, right? Well, three
Yes.
questions. Do you believe someone should have a lawyer? Yes, everyone should have a lawyer. Do you think that people should have lawyers on retainer? Yes, emphatically yes. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes you go into a situation, whether you're a business person or it's a family matter, and you think that you can handle it on your own, right? And then you get into the thick of it and you say, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? Why did I file this appearance? And I'm in court right now and the judge is asking me these questions and I have no idea what this all means. I mean, there's a practice book that we attorneys have to follow when we go to court. It tells us how to practice law. It tells us how to do the motions. It tells us how to address the court. It tells us the protocol that we need. And so, as a lay person, sometimes it looks easy, right? But then when you're getting into it, you're like, oh, this is not as easy. And so, so like when you start doing
it's not law and order, people.
Are you ready for the...
Hi, welcome back. You have landed on Island Money 365. And today in the studio, we have Reine Boyer with us. Welcome, Ms. Boyer. How are you?
I am well, Petra. Nice to finally be here.
I know, right? We've talked on the phone. We have, communicated, but finally you've made it onto the podcast. So let me read your bio because it's very interesting, all the work that you're doing. So Reine Boyer is a passionate advocate and seasoned attorney with over 25 years of experience. Born in Haiti and raised in the U.S., Reine graduated from Yale College and the University of Connecticut School of Law. Her legal career spans family law, mediation, contract disputes, and business formation, with practice in Connecticut, Superior, Appellate, and Supreme Courts, as well as appearance in New York, New Jersey, and California. We're going to talk about that. Beyond her legal work, Reine is a humanitarian, coordinating disaster relief and educational missions to the Caribbean, and a lover of the arts. Me too, I love it. A dedicated mother of 5. My God. Reine believes in the power of fearlessness and the responsibility that comes with privilege. So I'm very excited to have you here with me today. 5 kids, Reine? 5?
5 that only one that I actually birthed, but 5 in my family in total. We're a blended family, so it's a great.
Okay. Yeah. That's still raising 5 children. I have 2 boys and I need to buy more food every second. So I can just imagine.
Absolutely. And there are 2 boys, every summer.
Yeah.
Growing boys.
So when you said 5, I'm like, oh my gosh, her budget, her grocery bill must be ridiculous.
It used to be. Yeah, definitely.
Oh my goodness. So once again, I'm so happy to have you here. Let me ask you, as I was reading your bio, do you need to be licensed in all these other states? Because you practice in, New Jersey, New York, California, Connecticut. Do you need to be licensed in all those states as well?
So what I have filed are called pro hoc vice applications that allows you, and that's Latin, right? Crazy. So it allows you to practice in that court for that particular case. So I've been able to file pro hoc vice applications in those particular states where I was able to, do a habeas motion and, in California. And then in New Jersey, it was a probate matter. And in New York, it was a family matter. So different courts in different states, you really have to be part of that. You have to file the applications in order for you to enter into court and say, Your Honor, my name is,
okay. Thanks for that knowledge, because I didn't know. I was like, she have a lot of licenses.
Yeah, the pro hoc vice VHA applications, but I'm only licensed in the state of Connecticut. But, when I do
Okay.
take on another case in another state, it's because that client wants me to, because they were used to me and they, wanted my representation. And so I will file a Pro Hoc VHA application. But that was my past life. And so now I do everything in Connecticut practically.
Okay. So another question for you, and this is from my knowledge, because the only experience or the only understanding I have of law, right, is 1, Law and Order, 2,
Yeah.
Matlock, and 3, when I had to get my mortgage paper done by a lawyer. So those are my experiences with law, right? Can you do all these law? Do you have to get special designation for all these different type of law practices, or the one license give you privilege to practice any area you want to?
So I think that what you just said, the word practice, is so on point when it comes to law, right? Because it is the practice of law, just like it's the practice of medicine. And people don't want to hear that because they're like, you're practicing medicine on me? Yeah, I'm practicing medicine, I'm practicing law on you. And so really, you have to be able to be licensed in that state to actually, present or be in court, right, to represent someone, and also to be negotiating contracts and things of that sort, right? But as far as actual practice areas, specialties, you do not have to be licensed to do that, except for maybe patent law. You have to pass the patent bar. There's a specialty bar for patent attorneys. But for the most part, most lawyers can practice any area that they deem themselves competent to practice. And so competency means that you have to take CLE, continuing legal education classes. You should try to understand it by, being an apprentice to someone who is versed in that area, or just keep pushing the envelope and learning more and more and more. And a lot of young attorneys start off, working for the state, if they want to be a criminal attorney, they'll start off being either a public defender or a special public defender, or or a prosecutor on the other side, until they get their wings and then they feel that they can open up their own practice. Or you could do a baptism by fire like me, and you just go straight into that law practice, and then you just really surround yourself with mentors and people who really want to see you succeed. And I think I've been very blessed in my legal career that I've had some great mentors across the gamut who have helped me with different areas of the law.
That's amazing. Of course, you'll go by the fire. Of course, that's what we do. So tell me, we're going to get to some amazing questions. There's a lot I want to know because, as I said, those are my experiences, and I know TV is very there to draw you in, and the reality is may not be similar, might be a little slither of truth in there. But help me, how did you get here? Like seriously, Haiti to Connecticut. What happened?
Yeah. And even before I get there, I love Matlock. I used to come when I was
Thank you.
with my little one. Every single day I used to come home from court and just plop myself on that sofa and just turn on Matlock. And that's what I did all the time, was watch Matlock. And when I say to my oldest now, my 23-year-old, I say, you should watch Matlock. She's like, what's that? Because she's watching Suits and maybe Law and Order. But I'm like, Matlock is it, okay?
Yeah, my mom and I used to sit down and watch it all the time. Matlock. We only had, when we first migrated, though, I should tell you, we had a black and white TV that a church sister gave us from church, and it only had one station. Or one channel, I should say. And, it was that. It was. So mom and I, we should just sit down and watch Matlock. It was really good, though. It was really good.
Very good. And I think the thing that I loved about Matlock is the way that Andy Griffith, I think it was Andy Griffith who's the actor, he basically always gave you a narration, a story. And that's how he, talked to the jury. It was always a story. It was always, my client this, my client that. And he weaved everything together. And it was just such a great, he was eloquent in doing so. Sometimes he would befundle and be kind of like the crazy, absent-minded professor type of lawyer. But then it always came down to this really interesting story. And I think that's what really started attracting me, because I started watching Matlock well before I became an attorney. But that's what really attracted me to the law, the way that lawyers can weave a story together and really just, grab you, and that intersection between the law and advocacy and narration is just fascinating to me. And I love creative writing, so all of that came together for me with the law.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So how did you get here? Let's get back to that. How did you get here?
So I am an immigrant, obviously. Came here when I was 5 years old and um, came here from Haiti and Haiti, my native land, and really didn't speak much English at all. So it was sort of like, again, a baptism by fire. My parents really, hammered into me that I had to learn English, and I learned English very fast and just did all of my schooling here practically here in the United States. I went to Catholic schools most of my life. I think I did 1 year in public school, which was my kindergarten year when I first came. And then from then on, just did Catholic school, and then graduated from high school, went to Northwest Catholic High School in West Hartford, and then went to Columbia University or Columbia College, the undergrad part of the university, my first year. And then I transferred afterwards to Yale College, part of Yale University. So I graduated from Yale College. And then after that, I applied to law school and got into UConn Law and went on a full ride, and that was a fantastic experience. The law school was not a fantastic experience, but just getting in and being able to do what I need to do. Finally, I realized after I graduated that was a good experience. But
So
while
why
I was
wasn't it
doing
good? So why wasn't that good experience, you think?
Oh, just law school in general. It wasn't the school itself. It was just the law school experience itself that was just really difficult. It's not an easy task because you go into law school knowing that you have to think differently. And throughout the whole process, you're like, this is not how I think. I think critical thinking and critical reasoning, which is what lawyers engage in, is a different thought process than most people. I think, to be honest with you, we think the way scientists would think. When you critically reason something, you're saying this is this because of that. So logic is a really important factor when it comes to the law and being able to put an argument out there and being able to go from A to Z and being able to connect the dots. And so that I had never been exposed to until law school.
Okay.
Very different experience. Yeah.
Hear that? And it teaches listen out there critical thinking. We gotta we gotta get that in the schools, critical thinking.
Yeah, we
So
definitely have to get that in the schools.
yeah. So did your parents tell you why you migrated or that you're migrating? Or did they say, you know what, you're gonna be in America tomorrow? Did they like prepare you or anything like that?
So my story is a very different one. I came to the U.S., and came to be with my family. My aunt and my uncle raised me, and so I lived with my mother back in Haiti. And my aunt had a dream that I should be here in the U.S. And literally, she had a dream and said, "Okay, I'm going to go ahead and apply for her." And then, of course, the family got together and said, "Yeah, she should come." And so I migrated here, and they raised me, my aunt and my uncle. And psychologically, they were my parents because they raised me since I was 5 years old. My mother then later emigrated with my sister and my brother, and they went to the other part of the country, not really other part, but they went to Philadelphia, and that's where they lived. And then I was given a choice to either stay here in Connecticut or to be over there. And so at that point, I was like 9 or 10 years old. So I was like, no, I'm going to stay in Connecticut. And so I just remained here for the rest of my life. Well, I'm still living, but up until and did 1 year in New York, my first year in college. But pretty much that's my story in terms of my migration story here to the United States.
What else sparks your imagination or passion for the law?
So I'll be honest and tell you, since age 7, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I had this like amazing fascination with superheroes, and so to me, I always thought that lawyers were superheroes. And as I got older, in high school, I learned about the NAACP, Charles Hamilton Houston, Pauli Murray, and Thurgood Marshall, and those figures were very iconic figures of what the law can do to make a transformational change in society. And so with the civil rights movement and all of that, I loved it. And even when I went to college, I pretty much was an African American studies major with a history concentration. And so for me, just learning about the Black liberation struggle here in the United States really just fueled me even more. And I started that journey as far in terms of learning more about the law from the time I think since high school up until, even before I got to law school. I worked on a case, the Chef versus O'Neill case. I worked with Professor John Britton at UConn Law School, and I was still in college, and I worked with him on that case, and it was just a phenomenal. I wasn't even in college. I was in my last year in high school, and I was just an intern, but I learned so much, and I saw the transformational aspect of law, and it just really sparked in me like, oh, I want to be a constitutional lawyer, but I'm not a constitutional lawyer. But I'm a lawyer, so it did get me to the law school.
There you go. Hey, you still became a lawyer, right? You're one of the big threes that most immigrant parents want: a lawyer, doctor, engineer. So
Yeah, exactly.
you're the lawyer.
Yeah,
We all need lawyers, right?
yeah.
So how do you balance the demands of family law and mediation with your personal philosophy on justice and advocacy? How do you do it all?
So I would say that family law and mediation, which are really primarily the two areas that I specialize in, and then also business as well too. I see all of those as being areas that an attorney can perfect their advocacy skills, right? So that we can not only advise the client on how to navigate their business ventures and how to draft a contract, or not draft, but to negotiate a contract, how to, strike a deal. All of those things that we do as attorneys all are for the same purpose of advocating for that client so that they can be successful in whatever area that they come to you for. So as a family attorney, I pretty much give my clients advice on how to either get out of their situation if it's a divorce, or to keep their families intact. If it's a support case or a custody action. So I advise my clients with respect to that. When it comes to business, how to, I help them to formulate that business entity, and then to keep their businesses going, and to help them with their brand, and to help them negotiate a contract, or to help them, sort out, what they need to do within that contract. And as far as the other areas that I do as well too, mediation, it's mostly for family cases. I do mediation. So when you don't want to go to court, you do still end up going to court, but when you are divorcing and you want a mediator involved, and you don't want it to be something that's contentious, then, I help with that respect. So I think that advocacy is the key word, and that's how I see myself as an attorney, not just an attorney, but an advocate, somebody who is navigating, cheerleading, coaching, consulting, helping you along, triaging, so that you can, figure out what the issues are and be able to get to the result that you want.
I love that. I consider, I'm a financial coach, as you know, and that's one of the big things, just being there, advocating and showing them the pathway to their success that they want.
Absolutely.
So, do you believe everyone should have a lawyer on retainer? What are the benefits, and how can someone go about establishing this relationship? Go ahead, tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so those are two questions, right? Well, three
Yes.
questions. Do you believe someone should have a lawyer? Yes, everyone should have a lawyer. Do you think that people should have lawyers on retainer? Yes, emphatically yes. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes you go into a situation, whether you're a business person or it's a family matter, and you think that you can handle it on your own, right? And then you get into the thick of it and you say, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? Why did I file this appearance and I'm in court right now and the judge is asking me these questions and I have no idea what this all means? I mean, there's a practice book that we attorneys have to follow when we go to court. It tells us how to practice law. It tells us how to do the motions. It tells us how to address the court. It tells us the protocol that we need. And so, as a lay person, sometimes it looks easy, right? But then when you're getting into it, you're like, oh, this is not as easy. And so, so like when you start doing
it's not law and order, people.
you do your taxes and you're like, wait a minute, I know basic math. I don't know all this other stuff, And so I think, in general, it's always good to have an attorney who you can, use as your counselor to what's the word, to bounce things off of that person. And definitely an attorney on retainer, which a lot of people don't know is a possibility. And it's definitely something that I recommend for businesses, especially small businesses. Large businesses, they have attorneys, they have whole law departments, right? And so what I tell people usually is when you are a small business, you need that law department or you need that general counsel. And so having an attorney on retainer means that person is dedicated to your business. And what happens is when you call them, you get a call within a few hours or a few minutes, depending on what you work out in terms of your retainer agreement. And that person, you talk to that person and say to that person, these are the things that I'm looking at. I have a contract here for vendor services and I want to send it to you so you take a look at it. And so you send it to your attorney and within a few hours or a few minutes or whatever it is, that attorney gives you his or her impression of what the contract or his or her reading of the contract. And then it makes things more accessible and makes things, makes more sense what you're looking at. And I always tell people, try to do that because that helps you as far as moving forward, because you don't want to get to the middle and say, oops, I didn't know this. And then now you have to now get an attorney to undo the mess that you made because you didn't get one from the beginning.
The mess. To hear the word, the mess that you. So, okay, I understand that. First of all, let's do two things. Let's break down retainer. Does that mean you got to pay somebody on a monthly basis as a retainer? Is that what that means? And how the dickens, where do I go to find a lawyer? Build a relationship to have that rapport that if something happened, like, hey, in TV, those, that's the rich folks, but those folks who have influences can say, just call my lawyer. How do we get to that point?
And you know why they say just call my lawyer? Because they have the lawyer retainer. And it's not just for rich folks, right? I mean, having a lawyer retainer depends on what type of agreement that you work out with the attorney. You can do a month-to-month sort of agreement. You can say, I need you to be on retainer, and I will pay you monthly. This is the fee that I'm going to pay. And it's going to be broken down monthly, and this is what I can pay. Or it can be broken down quarterly. What I usually do with my clients, I usually set a fee. And then afterwards I say, you can pay me quarterly on this fee, or you can pay me every 6 months. But it really just depends on how long the contract is. Is the contract 6 months? Is the contract 1 year? Is the contract 2 years? I usually do a year's worth of contract, so then I'll tell my clients, pay me quarterly or pay me biannually. And so that is something that I can work out with a client. And lawyers are very flexible people. We're not as tough as people want to make us out to be. We want to help. And so therefore, we say to the client, I'd rather you come to me now than for you to come to me later. And then let's work out an agreement where you can pay me monthly or you can pay me semi-annually or whatever. And then I am there, not at your beck and call, but I'm there to triage, to help, to navigate, to negotiate, to do whatever it is that I need to do to help you be successful. Because I think that's what most attorneys want. They want their clients to be successful and they want their clients to win.
But being a retainer, you have to have something you want for, like me, a lay person, right? I don't have anything right now for a lawyer, but I never know what can happen in the future. Is that when you have a lawyer and retainer, or that's when you just have a relationship and start filling out and building a rapport so in case something happened?
Sure. So most people who have lawyers on retainer are business people. So they would be that person who, is a you have a startup, right? And so therefore there are things that that you're going to need in your business, to set the business up as a legal entity. So that lawyer could be on retainer, because not only will you deal with that, you may have other issues that come up. If you have employees, you need contracts, you need, all kinds of things that come with that business entity. So I feel it's more economical to have that lawyer on retainer, whether it's a year, you take a whole year to pay that lawyer, or every 6 months, or however, just so that that lawyer can do those things for you. And you would delineate what you want that lawyer to do in the contract. Now, if it's just an individual, say for instance, you have and that's why some people say, oh, I have a family lawyer, right? And so sometimes it means they have a family lawyer who does things for them as far as trusts and wills and estate planning. And so that's really good. And so you don't necessarily have the lawyer on retainer as much as you have a relationship with the lawyer, and you can call the lawyer up and say, hey, Charlie, hey, Ren, I would like for you to take a look at my trust documents and take a look at my power of attorney. I'd like you to draft a living will for me, or whatever. So therefore that attorney is able to do those really important items for you, and you trust that person, and you have that person on deck in the event that you need them. You don't necessarily pay them monthly, but that you've already established that relationship, and you can have that person take a look at your stuff. And then once they've drafted those documents, now you keep that relationship, and you go back to that person when you need to amend. You have a new birth in the family, and you want to put that kid in the will, or or do something with the trust. Now it was an irrevocable trust, but now you want to make it a revocable trust. You go to that same attorney, because that's who you know, and they know all your business. So it's good to have
all your business.
all your business.
So, okay. So do you do family law as well? Do you do that, like the will and trust and stuff like that? I know you say do family, you talk about divorce and stuff, but does that include the will and the estate planning and stuff as well?
So I will say to you that I'm associated with another Caribbean American attorney, Bevan Brad McLean Law PLLC, and they're out in Shelton. My firm is Fairfield County Law Group, which is in Trumbull. But like I said, I'm affiliated with McLean Law, which is in Shelton, as of counsel. And what I do is I'm helping to build that practice as far as the family practice is concerned, with respect to divorces and custody actions and support and mediation, as well as contract law. But I'm also learning to do the trust work. And that's what his specialty is. So I always tell people, if you want to trust, if you want to, I can do wills, but if you want the trust, which is what a lot of us as people of color, we do not have those instruments and those legal documents that are very powerful, that can transfer wealth, that can build legacies. We don't have that. And so I tell people, get those things together, and our firm will help you with respect to that.
Nice. So, I don't know if you didn't really touch on this piece, but where do I go? Do I go to, where do I go find my lawyer? It's like, so most of us refer through a friend, right? Like my lawyer that signed my mortgage paper, I got referred to a friend. But like, if you don't have any friends or family and nobody don't know anybody, where do you go to find a lawyer? To the bar association? What? And then interview them like, hey, what are you? What do you do?
So some people, of course, they sometimes look in online, but I would not recommend that. I would say that a family friend or another attorney is always the way to go. Connecticut Bar Association is the way to go as well too, because they sort of vet the attorneys. And I say sort of, it's because they, attorneys in good standing are allowed to, to be on the list, right? But I would say that the best way to go about it is to ask a friend. Everybody knows a lawyer, or everybody knows someone who knows a lawyer, right? And so, you know someone who owns a house, who is the attorney who did your closing, were you satisfied with that person? Always get, information, feedback, vet that attorney through your friend or through whoever is referring you to that person, I would say. And it's always a good thing to get a referral through a friend, a family member, or another attorney, because that is the best compliment. Like I always consider, I don't advertise. And so for me, I consider someone referring me to, referring um, me to that person as the best form of advertisement, and also the best compliment as well, because the client sees you as someone who has allowed them to prosper or to get over a situation or to be successful in whatever it is that they came to you, and now they're referring you to someone else. So I feel that that is the best compliment.
I agree. I completely agree. Most of my clients for financial coaching come through referral.
Yeah.
That's the highest percentage of my clients. So I completely agree. That shows that they're were a success and they believe in the work that you're doing. And, you help them to achieve what it is that you're trying to do, the service that you've promised, you're giving it to them. So that's amazing. So, so your involvement in disaster relief and educational mission in the Caribbean is commendable. I love that. You're giving back. How do these experiences influence your work as an attorney and your perspective on global justice?
Oh, that is a packed question. So
I'm good. No, sir.
you're good. You're good. Um, so a lot of times people say to me, how do you do that? You're an attorney, but yet you've done mission work and you've done philanthropic work in the community. And I say that to me, it just comes naturally. And I feel that unless I do those things, I don't feel like I'm a complete person, right? So I don't just go to the office or go to court. I actually try to roll up my sleeves and get involved in the community. Several years ago, over a decade ago, there was the earthquake in Haiti. And so that was just automatically something that I had to be involved in. I had my practice, but I also packed my bags and I went to Haiti right after the earthquake, and got caught out there with little tremors. There were still tremors happening even while I was there, but that didn't deter me. I brought a group of medical students and doctors from Yale New Haven Hospital, and just throughout the tri-state area, they joined our group, and we went down there, and I was able to, mobilize along with established local people down there to get things together to do a clinic. And we did the clinic for several months. I was part of an organization called the United Haitian American Society, and we did it through that organization, along with a priest, an Episcopal priest that actually set up the clinic down there. His name was Elie Millien. And so Reverend Millien was instrumental in getting the community mobilized, so that he provided the medical, along with us, provided the medical assistance to the entire community in Haiti, in that area, in Carrefour in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince. So that was a tremendous experience, loved it. And it just really just emphasized for me that we as people, we're all connected. And so we need to be able to give back to one another, no matter who we are or how big we think we are. We just need to know that, what's the word, that, all of us are we're wonderfully but fearfully made, right? That's what the Bible says, that we are very fragile and anything could happen. And so we need to be there for each other as a community. And so that's kind of the idea that I have in my mind when I work for other people, when I do philanthropic work, and I carry that over to my law practice, trying to help others. That's really the forefront of what I do in my practice.
So what are you doing right now in terms of bringing the young people, especially minorities, into law, introducing them to law, showing them what's possible in law, and just because, you wanted to be a lawyer, but you didn't even get introduced to that kind of thinking and stuff until you got into law school. Right. So what can you do to introduce them at a younger age?
That is absolutely correct. So I wear many hats. Like I said, I do the philanthropic work. I love the arts. I'm on many boards. But at the same token, I know that to whom much is given, much is required, right? So you have to be able to give back to that community and to be able to build up the next generation. And so from the very beginning, I say about 20 years ago, I started teaching mock trial to my kids' school, the middle schoolers. And so we did that. We went to competitions within Connecticut and also New York, and it was just an amazing experience just teaching them about the law and advocacy and having them see them all dressed up in their little suits and briefcases arguing the law. So it was really cute. And they were middle schoolers. And so from that experience, I didn't do it for maybe another 5 to 10 years, well, 10 years. And then pretty much a group that I belong to, the Fairfield County chapter here in Connecticut, Jack and Jill of America, we had to set up, well, I was told as teen advisor, I had to come up with a project. And so that was my project, to actually do a mock trial competition. And so we pulled from all areas, from private attorneys to state, state heads and chiefs, to finally, the judges and the chief Supreme Court justice was involved, and we got the competition going amongst the Jack and Jill chapters here in Connecticut. I had my group, which I am a co-director of, the Anacaona Youth Enrichment Program, and we had these two groups participate, and we had pretty much a whole competition. And the kids argued before these seasoned attorneys, and then went on to the next next level, which was the Supreme Court in the state of Connecticut. And the whole bench, 9 justices, were all Black. And it was such a moving experience when, the marshal said, court is open, and you saw 9 Black judges come out. And it was just a beautiful experience. And these kids got to argue a criminal case in front of these 9 justices. And it was a
Oh, wow.
It's phenomenal. So my co-director, Pascal Millian Faustin, who I call my partner in crime or my co-conspirator, having our kids participate in that, along with, the Jack and Jill kids of our chapter of the Eastern Fairfield County chapter, that was just a transformative experience for them. And I think that's one of the things that really just inspired me to say that I want to do a pipeline law program. And that's what I'm working on right now, is to do a pipeline law program in the state of Connecticut, which will open up experiences to these children, doing Saturday instruction for them in the law and civics. And then, you'd start from like middle school all the way up to law school. And we would partner them with attorneys who are seasoned, and then just keep going with this program until the first cohort gets into law school. And so we would teach, do LSAT prep and SAT prep, college admission, law school admission. So I have a big vision for this program, and I'm really looking forward to doing it, because I really would love to influence the next generation of lawyers, especially Black and Latino, just people of color in this, who are going to be part of this program. And that's really my vision, for us to be the next superheroes in the state.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Good, because, we don't know our rights. You hear things, only when things come up in a situation like, oh, what are my rights here? Right? Like I'm going to sit down and open a law book. Hey, I'm not going to sit down and open a law book. I'm not. I read a lot of financial literature, because that's my interest, right? Yeah. So that's why it's good to have a friend or, somebody you have a good relationship who's a lawyer. They can do all that stuff for you and know all the jargons, right, in that field. So this is Island Money. So you please share your money story with me. What is your relationship with money? How are you handling it? Does it like you? Do you like it? What's going on?
Yeah, it burns a lot of pockets, it burns a lot of holes in my pocket. And I try to be altruistic, and, I like to donate, my money a lot of times. But I also am trying to save it as well, because, retirement is coming up really quickly. But I think as a Caribbean person, being conservative is what we are, I think, on a whole. And so, trying to save that money and, for retirement, trying to I'm a constant learner. So I'm always researching what vehicles are good to put my money in. What can we do to grow it, and like I said, this whole thing with the trust through the law firm, I think that's like the perfect thing in terms of making sure your assets are passed down and you are, ensuring generational wealth. And so protecting those assets as well is really important. So, my relationship with money is such that it's evolving. I make it, I spend it, but I also try to save it. And I think that that's what we as people of color sometimes have the hard part, the last saving part.
And invest it, right? Because saving alone not going to do it, but we also have to invest, right?
Yeah. And I
So
will tell you, I'm part of an investment group as well, too, a Caribbean investment group that we started up during COVID. And it's been in and around for 4 years now. And it's a, give and take. We're learning as we go along. And none of us are financial gurus, but we're trying to learn financial literacy. And our group pretty much tries the most that we can to learn, as we're not making money at all. but but we're learning. So then, we're building up our intellect as far as what it means to invest and what all of that means to the future of our kids.
Yeah, you need to bring some coaches as well in different fields, maybe investment and stuff like that. That would teach you guys so you can be more prepare or well versed in the area that you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of different coaches out there that teach investment, that teach savings and debt, paying off debt. There's a lot of areas. So if you want to learn, internet is good, but also a good coaches those financial literacy workshop is a good tool too for you to just keep improving your knowledge, increasing your knowledge rather.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's awesome. So did you come from money, or would you say growing up money was not an issue, didn't think about it, or how did it feel growing up? Like, you think you had money?
Well, I think I thought I did until I grew up. So, nothing was ever, we did vacations, but we didn't do vacations out of the country, right? We did vacations within the United States. My parents always, we went to Disney World, we went to Canada. Canada was a big deal. We did those types of vacations down south, but I never felt that I lacked for anything, especially since, I went to, not private school, but I went to parochial school. I wasn't independent. It was not an independent private school. It was Catholic education, but that still was private in the sense where I didn't really go to public school. So I always felt like, oh, I'm good, But I grew up in Hartford, which is a city, the capital of the state, and at the time growing up, I would say that Hartford is great now. I passed through Hartford and I'm like, wow, these buildings are beautiful. But at the time it was, up and coming city, right? So it had its good parts and its bad parts, And so therefore I never felt poor, but I knew we weren't rich, but I felt like we were solidly middle class. And so I never really had a need or want for anything. And plus my parents were very much like, don't worry, don't even think about all those things. Don't think about $100 sneakers because it's not happening.
It's not happening. My kids, I'm like, oh, what? Nope. Don't think about that. It's not an option.
Yeah. So I never thought about those things, but I never felt like I had any kind of lack either.
So they taught you to live within your means, then, you think, and you carry that into adulthood?
Absolutely. It taught me to live within my means. As an adult, you get to see things that you want to do. So of course you do what you can here and there.
Exactly. What's one lesson learned that you want to impart on anybody about money?
I would say, things such as the Roth IRA, they say that's really important, or, the UIL, I guess, right? The insurance, those insurances, what you can do to borrow on them or not borrow on them, taking stuff out prematurely, which is not good, right? Rolling over your regular pensions into those Roths, right? Or those types of funds. Investing, that's really important. I look at it and say, if I were in my 20s again, I would start investing, I wouldn't have waited. But it's because, you don't get those lessons. So I wish I had those lessons when I was younger to invest, and invest. Because then it's everything else is so much easier, right? but I
Hmm.
get those lessons.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so I always ask my guests, what is one saying or parable did your parents often share or use when you're growing up that taught you an important lesson?
Ah, gosh. Okay. So I would say that really what it comes down to is it's about education, right? So there is a parable, that says, uh, qu'on n'est pas dit l'esprit pour ça. That just means that just because you know how to read or you think you're educated doesn't mean that you really have wisdom, right? And
I
so
like
yeah.
that.
So, I may be saying it crazy and jacked up, but pretty much, the point is education definitely is a big thing in our Caribbean community or just our African diaspora. And if you're educated, you're good. So, but that's not necessarily true, right? So even like in our Haitian culture, it's l'église la caille l'école or l'école la caille l'église, which means, school, church, and l'église, yeah, church is l'église, school is la caille, and they call it school, right? So you only got those three things. Like they call it your home, your work, your school, and your education. And those are the three things that matter. But that's not necessarily true, right? Because you know that there's other things that you can get wisdom from. You can get wisdom from your experience meeting people every day, and the arts and all kinds of things. It's not just the formal education that matters. And we as I guess people in the African diaspora, we know that education sometimes starts in the home and not necessarily in the four corners of a building where there's a teacher. The teacher sometimes, all the time, are your parents. The teacher sometimes are your community, your village. And so just because you have the book smarts or the knowledge does not necessarily mean that you have the wisdom. And so I think that's a really important saying that my parents have always imparted to me.
I love that. That is so true. I can think of a lot of people as you're
Yeah,
saying that.
yeah,
Very smart,
yeah.
well read. They can tell us the way they thought they're just well read and all. And like, eh,
Yeah. Sometimes,
you know,
sometimes the
you
smart
know,
people are the biggest fools.
you can say it. You're the lawyer.
And
I don't want to come in after me.
my husband is funny because he'll say, you speak too much English.
Mean that you talk too much.
Yeah,
I like
you
that. I'm going to use that. You speak too much English.
speak too
Be
much English.
quiet. No, sir.
You know it all. You speak too much English. So he'll say that sometimes to us, and not to us, but to like
I
the kids or
understand.
whatever. Just yeah.
And the last words of wisdom want to drop to our listeners, regarding to the law or anything at all.
So I have this on my website. I have two things. I have from Luke, the in the Bible. I have to whom much is given, much is required. And then I also have, and please don't crucify me if I don't have the quote exactly the way it should be, but pursue what sets your soul on fire, and that's by Jennifer Lee.
Mm,
And so I always feel that, if you take, I live by those two things, because I feel that I have been given much. I have been blessed in so many ways. And so for me, it's just a no brainer to do philanthropic work and to really put myself out there in the community to help inspire the next generation of lawyers. And so that Luke 12 verse, I think 48, is really like pivotal to me in my development and how I look at life and people and my influence on the younger generation. And then of course Jennifer Lee's, pursue that what sets your soul on fire. It's like your passion. Pursue that, but also pursue what you're good at too, because you something you could be passionate about something, but it doesn't mean you know how to do it. Just because you know how to dance, So make sure you're good at what you're pursuing.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Like I only sing in the shower. That's it. That's where I sing. And church, because church, people are like, oh, go ahead, sister, go ahead. You can't sing, but I go ahead and sing. 'Cause I'm praising my God. I don't worry about what they
We have a little old lady that say, bless her soul.
bless her soul. Once they say that, you can't sing.
Yeah,
Lord bless.
absolutely.
So where can they find you, Attorney Boyer?
Yes. I'm sorry, what did you say?
Where can they find you?
Oh, so you can call me at 203-332-5900. And also my website is fairfieldcountylawgroup.com. And looking forward to consulting with any and everyone who touches base.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You dropped a lot of knowledge, and now I know a little bit more than Matlock.
Yeah.
A little bit more than Law and Order. So thank you so much for blessing us with your presence here on Island Money 365. And remember, y'all, until next time, keep your money irate.
Bye.